broadcast. It is live.
I find it offensive.
Huh?
Yeah, you have the guy cast.
Yes.
So they're probably busy later.
Computer cast.
Welcome to the April 2018 Omaha Managers Group meeting. My name is Jon Larsen. I'm a systems engineer and chief technology evangelist. Your name? All of that. You may have seen me on such things as Midday on Channel 6. And here comes the metric system. So I heard through somebody sent me an email, that somebody being Louis, that Fedora 28 beta is out. So here's some highlights.
Yeah, modular is that along with modular.
We have taken a simpler approach to modules. Oh boy. 64-bit ARM is now the primary architecture for Fedora Server. Let that sink in for a second.
I have to convert my stuff.
So essentially, that probably feeds into Red Hat, which eventually becomes CentOS. So ARM architecture in the data center. We know it's happening. That's an interesting to see it come as the official primary architecture. Now, is it always referenced as A-Arch, AA Arch? I don't know if that's a typo or what, but it's their magazine. I'm sure that's what it's called. New GNOME. They now include the guest editions from VirtualBox and Kubernetes, as well as some other compiler connections and things like that. So we were also discussing earlier that doesn't Ubuntu come up with their long-term release this month?
1804 beta 2's out.
Okay.
Yep, releases at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Okay.
They released all the other ones earlier, but they did not release a beta of their server, which is pissed me off about it.
Has anybody messed with the Tinkerboard yet?
I did get a Route 64.
You did get one. That's cool.
I got a Pi Plus.
So it's the same form factor as Raspberry Pi, but the S version comes with 16 gig storage built in.
The Pi has AC. Where?
Oh, for the Plus?
And you need that, doesn't it?
You know.
It's still shared.
It's still shared, so it's only like quarter gigabit.
Right, but the Tinkerboard, it's separate. It's not shared.
Right.
But I hear the audio was pretty good. Gigabit. You can do, the jumpers allow you to plug the board into a computer and access the storage, like you can put the operating system on it. And the Wi-Fi is a separate header pin. So you can disconnect the internal antenna and hook it up to an external antenna. So I'm probably gonna pick one up at some point here. Yeah, so the S is the new one. It's just supposed to be coming out this month. And it's also using the Rock chip. If you get a chance, the Explaining Computers YouTube channel has a quick talk about it. But it actually comes with a copy of Android. Yeah. But yeah, it looks pretty good. The competitor single board computer.
In red.
But they say that it's going to output 4K right off the HDMI on this. So, and 128 kilobit, or was it 192?
192.
It's 192 for the audio. So if you're making a TV box, that might be the best way to go. Has anybody ever done anything in their car with a Raspberry Pi at all? There's I was watching a video last night about Open Auto. So they were taking the 7-inch touchscreen for the Pi and putting the Pi together, and it's essentially allows you to do Android Auto from your phone, and it mirrors it with the Raspberry Pi. So you can make your own head unit for like $100, rather than spending the $400 or $500 that normally costs. I know there are Android head units out there, but they're not officially supported, so to speak. You know, your apps may vary as they come in. Any other news out there that anybody has come up with?
416 to that.
416.
Correct. They dropped 8 CPU architectures that I did write that.
They dropped 8?
Yeah.
Alpha? Alpha architecture?
Just one called like the Shine, which there's some I didn't recognize anyone, but it's supposed to have some network enhancements and stuff like that. So.
I was remembering back to our install fest with the Deck Alpha that we had to work with. That beast of a system.
It was a great heater. I still may have one in my garage.
Really?
I've got an Ultra 60 there. I may have a old Alpha still in there too.
Is that Spectre? No, this is here. 416.
It's got some additional Spectre fixes for other chips like Barbie speed and stuff like that.
Better off fixes?
Better fixes. I don't know if this is Repto line yet or not.
Intel have announced their Core 8 Plus CPUs today.
Yeah, little heat your laptop.
Yeah, well, you keep your legs warm.
You're supposed to be able to make your own chips too.
Intel? It's about time.
You know, we're working with AMD for the graphics chips too.
Well, dare I say, embrace and extend? The old Microsoft moniker. And extinguish?
Yes.
Triple E. So, shall we get this started? I have not practiced. This is all off the cuff. I hardly practice. I had this entire big sheet of stuff I was to talk about yesterday on TV, and it's like 3 things out of that entire list. But I don't know what 3 things they're going to ask. So this is kind of interesting.
We'll take out context would be great.
Yeah.
Fascism and infotech, 2 things are going to go.
Now, the one thing that happened at Infotech on Monday was the photographer was out there filming, and I had the drone steady, but he brought the camera in really close, and it clipped the front piece of his camera, and it went straight down. Didn't break any of the blades or anything. They got a little scuffed up, but the next day I had somebody help wanting to do the whole hand flying thing, and it got flown into a curtain table, took the blade right off. It's like something soft did more damage than going straight to the floor. It's just one of those things. Yeah. I can show it to you later when we're done. Oh boy, what's a VPN? Who doesn't know what a VPN is? All right. So it's usually an encrypted tunnel between 2 points, generally between a host and a network. It was originally deployed in the business world. Individuals have been using their own VPNs over the past decade for many, many things. Some examples are, I want to watch BBC iPlayer. Maybe not. There's usually things in there. So even Netflix and others have been trying to prevent people from using VPNs to watch their content. It's rather interesting to see how many people are trying to get around that.
You get 50 viewers from the same IP. It's kind of.
Oh, yes. Tell Rob we're in here. Hello. Welcome. So OpenVPN has an open source component to it, like a community edition. It uses the OpenSSL library for certificates, authentication, and encryption, as well as the cipher, the key size, and HMAC digest. You can tunnel over UDP or TCP. Craig, didn't we work on an OpenVPN project once and didn't have much success with it? And that was DD-Wort, wasn't it? Yeah. I finally worked through that like 3 years after we tried it. This was like 4 years ago. But it was a challenge, that's for sure.
Yes, it was.
Why do you need a VPN? Well, you want to protect your traffic while in transit. If you travel a lot, like Chad, you may, or work in a coffee shop or co-working spaces, protecting your traffic is key to internet hygiene. Now, how many people have heard that term, internet hygiene? I made it up last night, so you probably shouldn't have heard about it. But it sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Sure.
Does anybody use a VPN when they're traveling?
This thing always has a VPN on it.
Would you know which one is it? Is it like IPsec or?
Right now it's OpenVPN. Ryan has a
You keep them
service
guessing by
called,
switching everywhere you go?
Hmm?
You said right now it's OpenVPN. I was like, maybe you switch every time you move to a different location.
well, I mean, it used to be T. But, so like staff members that might have to take a laptop home, I have no idea what kind of Wi-Fi they're connected to.
Mm-hmm.
Even at home, it's probably open.
We have some phones at AIM made by Snom out of Germany. And they allow you to actually put in the OpenVPN credentials in the system.
Right on the phone.
Right on the phone. So it creates the tunnel, does its thing, and then, well, the first way it works is you give it a URL in the system. It pulls down the config from your web server. Then it creates the tunnel. And then it does the provisioning with your VoIP server. So it's essentially just a standalone thing by itself. You don't have to worry about putting a VPN endpoint in someone's house and not seeing what's in their house, because it's just between the phone and the phone system, which is nice.
How much are those phones?
180.
Really?
Yeah. They're relatively inexpensive. Yeah. We have a newer model that has a USB port on the back, and you just put a wireless adapter and you can just do it wirelessly too. I can pull it up later for you out of my Amazon list so you can see it. It's pretty handy because we had a lot of people who, well, my office isn't where my router is, so I can't plug directly in. So you either have to do some like wireless client, like the old gaming adapters. But the newer solution works much better than our older solution. There's actually a Snom in that room that's VPN'd in to the building next door. Pretty handy. If you get it wrong, boy, it really gets it wrong. But once you get it going right, it works pretty good. And then they can essentially take it anywhere, as long as it's not blocked, right? So, okay, so we're gonna kind of mess with my server at home a little bit. Dun-dun-dun. And we're gonna install on my firewall, create certs, open the firewall, and configure a client. So I've kind of already done all this, but didn't turn it off because of time today didn't permit it. So for CentOS, you essentially do yum install OpenVPN. Now there is the OpenVPN access server that you can get from their website, but that requires a license because it has a web-based component to it. So you can do like a free trial for a little bit, and then you can go and pay them. But the free stuff works pretty good. There is a sample config, usually in the sample config directory, and then you can cd to it's the OpenVPN. So Something happened at home. Is that big enough?
Maybe not for TV.
Well, how's it look on TV?
I don't think that looks too bad.
It should be 14 point.
I don't know why I'm looking up there. I can look down here.
I do like the amber brings back memories.
Well, I had an amber monitor on my laser 128 for the longest time.
Sitting here,
I said I thought it was much easier on my eyes than the green.
have you tried cool retro trim bottle? You need to try that.
Does it give me like little bars in the fonts and stuff?
It does have just a wipe down the screen, the whole field. It's cool retro trim.
Maybe we should look at that.
16 is
So I went into the sample config files and I had there's a number of them in here. I just did this sample server config. And the things I really went and changed was I changed my default port. The default port is 1194, but I'm running 1196 just in case Cox is looking, like they should care. I actually have multiple servers running at work where it's like 94, 95, and 96, and 97, and they're all different configs. It's like the phones I was telling you about, they came in on a different port than the standard where other people come in. That way I can kind of isolate them to be a different setup because you can push out networks and things like that. So it gives you a little bit more control. You've got your protocol. By default, it's UDP. You can do TCP if you'd like. I had to turn on the tunnel device for mine. And you have to put in your certificates. So by default, I had to download EasyRSA from Git. So I got version 3, and I copied it in, and then you're doing the init on the PKI. So if I do that init again, it's going to totally blow away all my setting. So and the build. So let's assume I did the PKI and the build CA. It's already had that already. And Craig, I think this is where we had our biggest issues when we were doing this last time was certificate creation, trying to get that all correct when we were doing it.
Sure.
Has anybody here used EasyRSA before? So it's just a little tool where you can pass stuff to generate the stuff. Version 2, you always had to source the variables file before you could use it in your, like through / source vars in bash so that it could read the values before you run it. Version 3 now just imports it automatically. So you can go in and change some of your values if you'd like when you're running EasyRSA, some preset values.
what do you have the expiry set to? That's curiosity. Once you're done.
Oh. Stop.
10 years.
Yeah. And obviously it's coming it out, so it's just the default. So yeah. Doesn't everybody do 10 years? Pretty much, yeah. So let's do generate request. Let's call this one travel. No password. So if I was doing a server, I put in server, but I'm doing the client, and I'm just going to call this one travel again. So I'm going to sign the request. Yes. Enter passphrase. Oh. All right, there we go. So I have a number of certificates. FW01 is my server certificate. Pi was my Raspberry Pi. I was going to try to do a mobile client thing. Have you seen those Raspberry Pi units where they just set them up so when you go to a hotel, you get them on the hotel's network, they create a tunnel back to your server, and then everything you have passes over it. Not somebody has done it with combined with the Pi hole. Are you familiar with that? So it's a anti-ad, anti-malware for your house. You put it on the Raspberry Pi. It's called the Pi hole, and use it as a proxy. Yeah, yeah. Oh, so here we got the server config. We're changing the default port, which we did, and we have to set our CA cert and our key locations. Well, this took a lot longer last night when I was doing it. I'm just putting it directly to the path.
Server account or client account?
Server.
Oh, server.
Yeah.
Oh, you're adding it then. Sorry.
Yeah. So I actually decided to do 2048 in the Diffie-Hellman. Oh my gosh. I'm glad I'm not doing it right now because that took almost 10 minutes. Now, the system I was running it on was like a little Atom system. So it's not the most powerful CPU in the world, but it worked. You can change your server subnet. By default, it's 10.8. So this is between the server and the client. That's the network it's going to use. Huh. My brother is texting me. Here's where you're pushing out a route to your internal network so that any client that connects to the server gets that route pushed to it automatically. I don't think I changed anything else. Oh, I turned on DNS push for DHCP options. So it should be using, that's OpenDNS. Now there was a new one announced yesterday, the quad all ones. I'm trying to remember who that was. Cloudflare, that's right. Okay. So we have 1111. We have Quad 9, which is their anti-malware DNS. We have Google's and OpenDNS. So the funny thing is about that announcement yesterday about all the ones, it's like we know some of you use that address to black hole stuff. So you might want to look about changing it. Wonder how much it costs them to get that IP. It was? That's pretty much everything that I changed. I mean, the keep alive is still set. Compression LZO is turned on. Persistent key and tunnel. And there is the normal status log, but you can also turn on the regular log. Let's turn on the regular log. we set our settings and we start it up. There's our log doing stuff. What I didn't show was changing my firewall to open up that port. Is everybody familiar with Adam Hayter's firewall script that we've talked about several times? So all I had to do is add an entry to UDP open and then added the port to it. So there. When you rerun the script, it just rereads it and then opens all the ports again. Yep. Okay, so when we generated that certificate for the client, we called it travel. I had another one that was in there called Tosh for the Toshiba. You have to get that to your other device. Now, this is where there could be an issue because you need the CA cert, the key, and the certificate for the client you just generated to do the connection. So you can either SCP that over your home network securely, put it on a flash drive and move it over, get it in, and see how it works out. Now, there are files that will allow you to do these configs. I don't know if I have an example of one. Okay. We can use this one because that's from school and that doesn't work anymore. So this is a client file that has all that items in it. So there's our remote with the IP and the port and the protocol. This one is going to ask for a user ID and pass. There's some auths and the ciphers as well as persistent keys and tunnels. And then you've got the CA cert and generally the as well as the private client key and stuff like that. Now you can actually generate those VPN files and deploy them to people so that they can connect. I've done that several times. But in this case, we could actually use GNOME to do it. We could add a new VPN. Get my CA cert, my user certificate, and my private key. There is an advanced, so if you wanted to turn on LZO compression and tunnel. Will it work? I think we should let's turn that on at the same time. So we can see up in the corner, we have the padlock, shows that we're connected. You can see what IP I'm coming from. There is the identifier of that client, so you can see who it is. It should also be showing some push out. as well.
This is on the server side?
Yeah, that's server side. If you would like, oops. Yeah, there's some network manager stuff in there. Not the easiest, but yeah, there's ton zero right there. Mm, 60. So that's my file server at home, directly from my laptop here. I was actually going to show the slides, but the pictures are not loading in my slides.
How do you, I've never gotten 12 millisecond ping times.
Over VPN?
Oh yeah, I mean, we're Cox. I mean, even without a VPN, connecting across town, man, that's bad. Mine's at least 3 times up.
Okay, see that IP? Let's turn it off. So that's now the IP here. Yeah, that's Cox connection. I'm kind of curious. You said 12 milliseconds. I've never run a speed test over here before.
I wonder, but our servers, I mean, the servers on south of Dodge, I live north of Dodge, so traffic goes, looks like the Bellevue and back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if maybe that's something.
I've seen some of the Cox stuff go to like St. Louis or Atlanta.
How many hops?
There's at least 5, usually more. Right across town.
What Wi-Fi am I connected to? Oh, that's going to limit my connection because the Wi-Fi is set to 9 per device when you connect to it.
Which Wi-Fi are you on?
AIM Exchange Guest. So let's do a little test here. Brain Exchange. So now I'm not using the Wi-Fi. That seems to be moving pretty good.
You're not using the VPN?
No, this isn't the VPN. So I was just, when I did the test before, I was using the free Wi-Fi. Now I'm bypassing the free Wi-Fi and using just a direct firewall connection. Because I have another in-house Wi-Fi for separate connections. We had some work done when I was at Infotech. They actually killed the power to the building, and my network hasn't been the same since. I lost my CenturyLink fiber connection, and I've tried to reset it and it doesn't work. So I had to like switch it real quick for classes at night. I haven't had a chance to go back and look at it. So
Doesn't show the tune time.
no. But let me redo the test now that I'm going through home.
Speed test.
I tend to use testmy.net because it doesn't use Flash.
I don't think anything did anymore.
Yeah. There's too many ads
Except for
on
my work,
speedtest.net.
learning stuff. But I know, speedtest.net does the, shows you pin times. To these different places.
Yeah, so I'm almost even there. And that's with the VPN running. So that's not bad. I mean, from a ping specific. Now, I'm only pinging to my house. That's not pinging out, Rob. That's just from here to a machine at my house.
Yeah, that's faster than I've ever seen. Mine's usually at least 30 milliseconds.
That's about right there, about 38, 40. That's pinging Google.
Yeah.
Come on, they're next door. 104. Huh?
Go through your VPN.
Yeah. Dallas. That seems silly. Go all the way to Dallas.
It's got fast, type.
Now, I know that was a pretty short presentation. So do you have any questions? Do it again?
So the DWRT offers that availability, OpenWRT does, to me, all offer plugins for that. Have you ever tried the D-Link, was it the D250, or it's got it built into it, the VPN concentrator? It's like dirt cheap.
I know TP-Link has their own, but it's IPsec.
D-Link's got one too. It's like, you got
Do I have Amazon?
I know you do. I know I do. D-Link, VPN. Yeah, DSR 250. There's a cheaper one.
There's the 150 and the 250.
Well, there's a bunch of different ones they have that'll do it. Some are like down like 50, 60 bucks. They're concentrators. You can do like 16 to 20 tunnels with some of them stuff. But they're supposed to have some tools for. They actually support OpenVPN on it. So.
The D-Link business blog.
Easiest. There you go.
Oh, look at all that traffic. It doesn't tell you the products.
It says business is not going to be useful.
So if you're on a Mac and you want to use OpenVPN, there's a client called TunnelBlick that you can import the OVPN into it. And you click on it and the little tunnel looks like the lights on in the tunnel and you're connected. And there is a GUI under Windows. It's just part of the OpenVPN client install. You can actually run it through a command line client and just connect in if you want. Let's see if I can do that. Oops, I just turned my Wi-Fi off. Ha! That's pretty good.
So how does OpenVPN compare to Facebook's VPN?
Facebook has a VPN?
You didn't hear about that?
It doesn't share with Cambridge.
No, I didn't know that.
Facebook was actually protected your data except for Facebook. They sucked everything on the VPN into their system. We got some great reviews. Type in Facebook VPN. Google, you'll see it.
Was this like one of their free internet options?
Yeah. Just another app you can install and just
Use that piece of visual.
in case you missed anything.
The only time I ever had problems with deploying those phones is the majority of routers that people have at home use 192.168. And when it's the same as my network, they don't quite route. So I have to modify everyone's router to do it. Because it was like, I don't see any packets. Because it's trying to route internally in their house. So.
They usually are just 0 or 1.
Yeah.
That's 3 and /16.
I've got like 5 subnets. So some of those all work together.
They usually change the third alphabet. Change out of the 1.
I had to do Verizon Fios out in California for that, getting it to work for some people from their houses. It was like their unit was like all in one, and they had to have a special password to log in, and it was a pain in the butt. And you get a call like, my phone stopped working. Okay. Did somebody replace your router? Yes. Okay, well that's why. Because all the IPs would change and they couldn't do anything. Well, all my cable boxes are working because it was a combined system, right? So that was fun.
I thought you might have mentioned something about our Polycom phone. It comes with a limited set of certificate authorities.
Oh yeah.
It's like 4, and getting a certificate outside of those 4 and installing is a lot of hoops you got to go through.
Yeah, SNOMs are really cool because they're essentially a router. They're like a Linux router. You can hit it with your web page and pull all the information and look at it. So if you wanted to, you could plug your computer into the second port and it would do it for you. It'd be like plugged right into it. And they're pretty slick. So that's the 370. They're from Germany.
They're German?
Yeah. Secure VoIP presentation.
Have you noticed any change in quality when you do it over VPN?
Not too much. And we've had like 4 or 5 running at once. I mean, if we have a lot of traffic, yeah, there's going to be some dropouts. But I mean, the worst thing we ever had was, you'll love this. Someone decided to move their own phone at their desk at the office.
Nice.
Yes, so the Cisco 7940. And what does it have on the back for network?
100.
How many?
Well, it's got 2 plugs.
Uh-huh.
One for the computer.
Well, I better plug them both into the wall. Oh, yeah.
What did it do to your network?
It made it unusable. It's known as a Chernobyl packet. It took out everything.
Did you have rapid spanning tree?
Because that's what they have
on
in
your
the
switch?
No, I'm not doing any big. I'm layer 2. I'm not layer 3. So the first we thought it was the wake on LAN stuff, because that's happened to us before with Lenovo equipment, where the wake on LAN stuff went crazy because there was one machine that was asleep, and it was broadcasting the hell out of the network. We had to update the Broadcom driver to eliminate that error. And that was like 4 years ago. So I thought, okay, they factory restored some of these equipment lately. Maybe that's what did it. And so we were going around like shutting off every one of the Lenovo pieces of equipment, going in and turning off wake on LAN, stuff like that. So the way I found it is I went and sat in front of the network rack and just went, 1, 2. I had 348 port switches. I lucked out and it was number 8. Because I pulled it, the lights are going, I'm just like, okay, who's at 20? I'm gonna go over there, and the girl had plugged her phone in to the wall and to a switch. It's like, this is the reason why IT staff is allowed to move equipment, not individuals. That was a rough 2.5 hours, let me tell you. Because people from home on their VoIP phones were saying, it's garbage, I can't hear anything. Well, it's because the server inside was being pounded so hard that the packets just couldn't get there. And even the phones internally. So when I did the phone system, I cheated, right? I only have X number of IPs because when it was originally set up, it was set up as a /24. I don't have enough IPs to add 100 phones. So I just added a second subnet. And it rides along the top of the other one. So you can't directly connect to a phone from your desktop, but the phone server sees it. It doesn't care. So for the phones that are off-site, they use the standard subnet, not the hidden subnet. And that's only ever cropped up as an issue recently when somebody factory reset a phone and it obliterated my IP addresses in their phone. So it went to DHCP, but it couldn't make calls out. Because it would ask the server, please give me my config file. It would give it the config file, and the config file said, use 172 subnet to talk to the server. Well, it couldn't talk to the server because it was at 192.
So when the phone is reset, when the phone's working normally, VPN is set up first.
Yeah, for the offsite ones,
Voice
yeah.
over IP.
And then it provisions itself to the server from there. I can even show you the boot procedure on the phone in there. It's pretty interesting. But the trick is you have to give it the config. And I'll tell you more when I'm not on video. So
Because all our configs are done by Mac.
yeah, You still have to provision the phone in the system. So it knows what the MAC address is because it's pulling the file over TFTP, right? But it's just the initial connection to get you there is the first step. Yeah.
Speaking of your network problems, can you turn up this website? I wonder if anybody's ever tried raptable.org.
Should I go incognito?
No, not that. So
Did it?
maybe you gotta put a www.
Wait a minute. Okay.
I might.
Dub.
Well, rat tables, plural. Yeah, thanks, John. So, I put a question out to Spiceworks because I was trying to find use switches, and I want to automate them as much as possible. Basically, we have like 200 physical ports and like 1,400 virtual ports. And so I want to have the entire configuration in a database. And then have a script, read that database, and use that to configure a switch. Port 1 on switch 1, port 2 on switch 2, belong to these.
Better have some good uptime on that database.
What's that?
Better have some good uptime on that database.
Well, this would be more or less a one-time thing. And then maybe
so you're just pushing the initial config out and it keeps it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not every boot up. All right.
And maybe, especially if you had a problem like you had with people plug in the switch into the switch, going and checking to see if something's changed. Mm-hmm. And I really don't know much about switches, especially at the command line level, because when we bought our last set of switches several years ago, I just assumed there had to be a command line SSH in there somewhere, and it turned out there wasn't.
Yeah.
But for a while, a lot of switches just, they only provided a web interface. But, so what I need is like, a DevOps solution for configuring and somewhat managing all of those ports, because if you need port 2 and port 2 on switch 2 and port 5 on switch 1 to be in the same VLAN to communicate, and you mess that up somewhere in our current switches, that's easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
Having something that's scripted to configure them all and checking that configuration later is really totally necessary. What's that? How much what?
How much does it work to?
Well, I can tell you there should be plugins for some things to do help with that. The racktables.org, it works with a few switches. And then the thing I've seen the most of is Microsoft's 2012 R2 logoed switches, where you can configure them with no plugins over SSH and PowerShell. So like you can literally say, get network switch Ethernet port 3, get set network switch Ethernet port 5, have it be a member of these VLANs. And I don't know enough about
Embrace and extend.
I was thinking, no, you have me at SSH, you lost me in PowerShell.
it does say in the Microsoft logoed switches, they can support other scripting languages. And I prefer Linux solution because
PowerShell's available on Linux supposedly. I don't know how it works. I've never had the courage.
they don't have science scripts. I think it was. But I was just wondering what other people do, because we're a small shop, very small.
Ours is Cisco. We use Rancid, and new stuff's ACI.
Rancid is that a
Rancid
source?
is really awesome network configuration. Cisco Rancid.
Here's that blip from a few weeks ago. That's port 28 on that switch. Yeah.
That was the day that the network went down, or something?
Yeah. 724 is nothing. That's just
How old are your
MRT.
NAC years?
Probably 5 years old, 6 years old.
Are they layer 3 switches, or are they just layer 2?
There's 2s. There's a cable on them. It's busy.
So can you manage you can see the traffic that's going on those switches, but can you configure the switch port?
Yeah, there's a telnet. That's it. But there's SSH as well. There's a management tool you can use.
See, I don't really have telnet, and definitely don't have SSH.
Boy, some of this is so old. Ha! It's temperatures. I graphed my temperatures. It's a good thing there's no spike.
I'm glad it goes to 200.
Yeah.
The hottest it's ever been in our server room was 140 degrees.
40?
Yeah. Is that the hottest that was 150?
No, it was 90. It said max 90.
Well, one of them said max 150.
I didn't get that hot. We had an issue a little over a month ago where the unit froze and it wasn't kicking on. So it wasn't a contactor. It was like a low pressure switch as part of the economizer.
This is an air conditioner.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the unit's got like 3 or 4 more years left on the compressor warranty because it's a Rheem. They're like 6 or 7 years or something like that. We've only had the unit for 4 years. And it's already had contactor, 2 low pressure switches, fan, because the thing runs all year, you know.
But it is a commercial one, it's not
It's not a tiny one, no.
I mean, it's not like one that's made for residential, I mean,
I don't believe so.
I mean, it's actually made for data centers.
No.
Oh, I worked for a company that did that, they just put a bucket underneath. But it was nice because it took weeks, so we got this wonderful combination of dust and like this white type mold that just poured,
Should we wrap it?
Sure. I don't have anything else. Nice sunset, actually. You can see some color. Finally, tired of all the gray that we've got.
I see your last thing in there is UPS, is it? That's Eric Raymond's newest project. He's making an open source.
Well, this is the rack
UPS
tables. He's making open source UPS?
Yeah.
So
like this is supposed to, like if you had serial numbers on your patch cables, then also you can track that. And I just found out about it, but you're supposed to be able, everything in this database, you're supposed to be able to read and then use that to configure your switches.
So you guys are really doing anything with rack looking at another project. That's just for you tracking servers in your various machines.
So any questions?
So does that,
Who's talking next month?
does that time out after so many hours, or how do you control that?
In the server config. I've had people stay on for days or weeks. It's like, hey, dude, turn it off. Because there's a keep alive in there as well. That'll just keep pinging it. A lot of times in our systems, we keep our colos up all the time. So we don't have the timeout in the system.
No, I meant like if you had travelers. Laptops.
You know, the only people who use OpenVPN on their laptops like me and Chad, and that's it. Nobody else. Well, Rob uses it. But I meant like from a company perspective, right? Only like some of the developers we have might use it. They love TeamViewer. So whatever.
My company either uses Cisco Connect Client or uses VPN, so.
Yeah, any Connect isn't too bad. I've actually got it working in Linux because I got to connect to our colo and it works fairly well. I mean, it's all SSL based as well, but it's like there's like a 2-step process that it took me a bit to get configured, but that finally works.
Yeah. I mean, that would be VPN client works pretty well with it too.
Yeah.
It's worth multiples. Very well.
So for the folks at home, we're going to end the video broadcast. Thanks for watching. And have a good evening. I'm not sure who's next month. We'll find out here in a moment.
What's this